Welcome back. If you watched part 1 of this series, the one about the enemy within, I want to start by saying something. The fact that you are here in part 2 tells me something important about you. It tells me that something in that first conversation landed. That something resonated deeply enough to bring you back for more. And what we are about to explore today goes even deeper. Because in part 1, we talked about the enemy within, the conditioned, inherited version of yourself that quietly sabotages everything you are trying to build. But there is a question that naturally follows that conversation. A question that the School of Gods answers in a way that I have never heard answered quite so clearly or quite so powerfully anywhere else. If the enemy within has been creating your reality, who is the one who gets to change it? The answer that Stefano Elio D'Anna gives in this remarkable book is both simple and completely mind-expanding. You are not the conditioned you, not the small, fearful, inherited version of yourself. The real you, the dreamer, the one who has been creating this entire experience, unconsciously, automatically, by default, and who has the power to begin creating it deliberately, consciously, and completely differently. If you have not watched part 1 yet, I am leaving it on the end screen. Go watch that first, and if you are ready to go deeper, let's go. Hey, it's Caroline, and this conversation might just change everything. Let me start with something that I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. You wake up in the morning, and before you have even fully opened your eyes, the world is already there. The bills that need to be paid, the client that did not come through, the financial situation that looks essentially the same as it did yesterday, and the day before that, and the month before that. The circumstances that feel so solid, so heavy, so completely independent of anything you think, or feel, or want, that the idea of changing them through some kind of internal shift seems, on most mornings, almost laughably naive. This is the experience of someone who believes, at the deepest, most unexamined level, that reality is something that happens to them. And I want to be honest with you, this was me. For years, this was exactly how I moved through the world. Not because I was unaware or unintelligent or not doing the inner work, but because the assumption that reality was external, that it was a fixed, independent landscape that I was navigating rather than a projection that I was generating, was so deeply embedded in how I experienced everything that I had completely stopped questioning it. It felt like reality, because for most of us, it is the only reality we have ever known. In the financial world specifically, this shows up in a very particular and very limiting way. When you believe that your financial reality is primarily determined by external factors, the economy, the market, the opportunities available to you, the people who do or do not choose to work with you, you position yourself as a reactor. Someone who responds to what the world offers rather than someone who generates what the world reflects back. And from that position, the most you can ever hope to do is navigate skillfully, manage risk intelligently, make the best decisions available within the circumstances you have been given, which is not nothing. Those are real and valuable skills. But they are the skills of a passenger, not the skills of a dreamer. And D'Anna makes a distinction in the School of Gods that I think is one of the most important and most overlooked in the entire personal development space. The distinction between the passenger and the dreamer, between someone who is living a reality and someone who is creating one. Most of us have been trained from the earliest age to be passengers, to accept the world as we find it, to work within the system, navigate the circumstances, manage the external conditions as best we can. School teaches us this. The corporate world reinforces it. The financial system is built on it, on the assumption that external conditions are the primary determinant of financial outcomes, and that the best you can do is position yourself intelligently within those conditions. But here is what the School of Gods suggests, and what my own experience, and the experience of every client I have worked with who has made a genuine, lasting shift in their financial reality, has consistently confirmed. The external conditions are not the cause of your financial reality. They are the effect. They are the dream that the dreamer has been generating, automatically, unconsciously, by default, based on the quality of their inner state, the depth of their assumptions, the frequency of their dominant thoughts and emotions and beliefs about what is real and what is possible. I remember the exact moment this began to crack open for me. I was sitting in my office, late in the day, reviewing the numbers for the quarter, and for the first time, not as a spiritual concept, not as something I had read in a book, but as a direct, visceral, completely personal recognition. I noticed something. The financial reality I was looking at was not random. It was not the result of market conditions or client behavior or circumstances beyond my control. It was, with almost uncomfortable precision, a reflection of exactly what I had been assuming, expecting, and internally rehearsing for months. Every number on that page was a perfect mirror of my inner state. Every pattern in the data was a projection of something I had been carrying inside long before it showed up in the external world. It was the first time I genuinely understood, at a level deeper than intellectual agreement, what D'Anna means when he talks about being the dreamer of your reality. And it was both the most disorienting and the most empowering moment of my professional life. Disorienting because it meant that I could not blame the external world for what I was looking at. Empowering because it meant that changing what I was looking at did not require waiting for the external world to be different. It required changing the dreamer. And that, exactly that, is what we are going to explore in the next part of this conversation. Because understanding that you are the dreamer is one thing. Understanding specifically how the dreamer creates financial reality, the precise mechanism by which your inner state becomes your outer experience, that is where this teaching becomes genuinely, practically, immediately useful. So now we have established the foundation. The reality you have been experiencing, the financial patterns, the circumstances, the ceiling that keeps following you from one chapter of your life to the next, is not a fixed, external landscape that you are navigating. It is a projection, a dream, a faithful, precise, completely impersonal reflection of the inner state of the dreamer generating it. And the dreamer is you. But I want to be very careful here, because this is the point where this concept most often gets misunderstood. And when it gets misunderstood, either gets dismissed as too abstract to be useful, or worse, it gets twisted into something that feels like blame. Like if your life is not what you want it to be, it must be your fault for dreaming it wrong. That is not what D'Anna is saying, and it is not what I am saying. So let me be precise about what being the dreamer actually means, and what it does not mean. Being the dreamer does not mean that you consciously chose every difficult circumstance in your life. It does not mean that you wanted the financial struggle, the missed opportunities, the patterns that keep repeating themselves despite your genuine effort to change them. It does not mean that everything that has ever happened to you is your fault in any moral or personal sense. What it means is something both simpler and more profound than that. It means that the quality of your consciousness, the sum total of your beliefs, your assumptions, your dominant emotional state, the story you carry about who you are and what is possible for you, is being projected outward into your experience of reality with complete, consistent, impersonal accuracy. Not as punishment, not as reward, simply as reflection. Just like a projector in a cinema does not judge the film it is showing, it simply projects whatever is on the reel with complete fidelity. Your consciousness projects your inner state into your outer experience without judgment, without preference, without any agenda beyond pure reflection. And here is why this matters so profoundly in practical terms. If your financial reality is a projection of your inner state, if the income ceiling, the recurring patterns, the circumstances that keep showing up are simply the dream your consciousness has been generating by default, then changing your financial reality does not primarily require a better strategy. It requires changing the dreamer. Specifically, changing the quality of consciousness that is generating the projection, shifting the inner state from which the dream is being created. D'Anna describes the dreamer in the School of Gods as someone who has awakened to their own creative power, not someone who has everything figured out, not someone who never faces challenges or difficult circumstances, but someone who has made a fundamental shift in how they relate to their reality, from passive passenger to conscious creator, from someone who reacts to the dream to someone who deliberately generates it. I want to share something personal here because I think it illustrates this distinction more clearly than any abstract explanation could. When I was in the financial and insurance world, I was an extraordinarily active passenger. I was strategic, disciplined, hardworking, constantly optimizing my external approach. I was doing everything a smart, motivated professional was supposed to do. And I was generating results, but always within a certain range, always circling the same financial altitude, no matter how much I adjusted the external variables. What I did not understand then was that I was dreaming from a very specific and very limiting inner state. An inner state that believed, at a level far below conscious strategy, that financial freedom required external permission, that abundance was something the system dispensed to people who had sufficiently proven their worth. That the version of wealth and liberty I actually wanted was real, but for other people. People who had started with something I did not have, or gotten lucky in ways I had not. That inner state was the dream I was generating, and no amount of external strategy was ever going to produce a fundamentally different projection, because the projector was running the same reel. The shift happened when I changed the reel, when I began imperfectly, gradually, but genuinely to inhabit a different inner state. One that assumed financial freedom as a natural expression of aligned consciousness rather than a reward for sufficient effort. One that related to abundance not as something to be earned from the outside, but as something to be generated from the inside. And as that inner state shifted, as the quality of the dreamer's consciousness changed, the dream began to change with it. Not all at once, not without the bridge of circumstances and decisions and external developments that always accompany a genuine internal shift, but unmistakably and in the direction of what I had been trying to create through external means alone for years. This is what being the dreamer means in practice, not magical thinking, not bypassing the real work of building a financially free life, but understanding at the most fundamental level where that work actually begins. It begins with the dreamer. It begins inside. It begins with the quality of consciousness you are bringing to every decision, every opportunity, every moment of your financial life. And the question that follows naturally from all of this, the one that I think is the most practically important in this entire conversation, is the one we are going to explore next. How does the dreamer actually create financial reality? What is the specific mechanism by which inner state becomes outer experience? And how do you work with that mechanism consciously rather than letting it operate by default? That is exactly where we are going. So now we understand what it means to be the dreamer, not a passive victim of circumstances, not someone who consciously chose every difficult experience, but the source, the projector, the consciousness whose inner state is being faithfully, impersonally, continuously reflected outward into every aspect of physical reality. And now comes the part that I think is the most immediately useful in this entire conversation, because understanding the concept is one thing. Understanding the specific mechanism, exactly how the dreamer's inner state translates into financial circumstances, income patterns, wealth-building outcomes, and the opportunities that do or do not show up in your life, that is where this teaching becomes something you can actually work with. So let me break it down as clearly and as practically as I can. The dreamer creates reality through the quality of their dominant state of being, not through occasional thoughts or deliberate visualizations or moments of inspired intention, though those things have their place, but through the baseline, default, largely unconscious state of being that runs underneath all of that. The state you are in when you are not thinking about manifesting anything. The inner climate that persists through your ordinary Tuesday morning, your routine financial decisions, your automatic responses to the circumstances that show up in your day. That baseline state is the reel in the projector, and it is running continuously, whether you are paying attention to it or not. In financial terms, this baseline state expresses itself in a very specific and very identifiable way. It shows up as your default relationship with money. The way you feel when you look at your bank account, not the way you want to feel or the way you are trying to feel through conscious practice, but the way you automatically, habitually, instinctively feel before you have had time to apply any technique or intention to the experience. That automatic feeling is data. It is telling you, with complete accuracy, what the dreamer's dominant state is generating around the subject of money and financial abundance. If the automatic feeling is one of scarcity, of tightness, of anxiety, of the persistent sense that there is never quite enough and that financial security is always slightly out of reach, that is not a response to your financial circumstances. It is the inner state that is generating them. It is the dreamer dreaming scarcity into the projection with remarkable consistency and efficiency. And here is the part that I think is most important to understand and most liberating once you truly absorb it. That feeling of scarcity is not caused by the numbers in your bank account. It is causing them. The relationship is not what most people assume. The external financial reality is not producing the inner state. The inner state is producing the external financial reality. I know that can sound counterintuitive, because the experience of it feels so strongly like the external is causing the internal. You look at the bank account, you feel the anxiety. The anxiety seems to be a response to what you are seeing. But what D'Anna points to, and what I have seen confirmed so consistently in my own experience and in the experience of clients I have worked with, is that the sequence is actually reversed. The anxiety was there first. running quietly in the baseline state, as a default relationship with money that predates the current bank balance by years, sometimes decades. And it has been generating the financial circumstances that seem to justify it, not the other way around. I had a client once who came to me after a significant financial loss. She had made a series of decisions that from the outside looked like bad luck or poor judgment. But when we traced those decisions back, through the thought patterns, through the emotional responses, through the baseline state that had been running underneath all of it, we found something that was neither bad luck nor poor judgment. We found a dreamer who had been dreaming financial instability for years, not consciously, not deliberately, but consistently and powerfully from a baseline state of anxiety around money that had been her default relationship with financial reality since childhood. Every decision that looked like bad luck from the outside was, from the inside, the dreamer generating exactly the dream their dominant state was calibrated to produce. When we shifted the work from external strategy to inner state, when we began addressing the quality of the dreamer's consciousness around money rather than just the mechanics of the financial decisions, everything began to change. Not immediately. Not without the practical work of rebuilding also being done. But from a completely different foundation. From a dreamer who was beginning, for the first time, to dream differently. And this is exactly what D'Anna means when he talks about the dreamer awakening. It is not a mystical event. It is not a sudden, dramatic transformation. It is the gradual, consistent, deeply practical process of bringing conscious awareness to the inner state that has been generating your reality by default, and beginning, deliberately and persistently, to shift it toward the state of the dreamer you want to be. The dreamer who assumes abundance rather than scarcity, who relates to financial opportunity from a baseline of genuine confidence rather than anxious grasping, who moves through the financial world not as a passenger hoping for good circumstances, but as a conscious creator generating the circumstances from the inside out. That shift from unconscious dreamer to conscious one is what everything in this series has been building toward. And in our final block, we are going to talk about exactly how you begin to make it, how you wake up inside the dream, how you take the understanding we have built across these 3 blocks and turn it into something real, practical, and immediately applicable in your financial life and beyond. Here we are, the final piece of part 2. And I want to start by acknowledging something that I think deserves to be said out loud before we talk about anything practical. If you have made it this far, through part 1 and now through part 2 of this series, you are not a casual consumer of this kind of content. You are someone who is genuinely committed to understanding something real about how reality works and how to change it. And that commitment itself is already a shift in the quality of the dreamer, already a sign that something inside you is waking up. So let's talk about what that waking up actually looks like in practice. D'Anna uses the image of lucid dreaming, the experience of becoming aware, inside a dream, that you are dreaming. And he applies it to waking life with a precision that I find genuinely extraordinary. Because most of us, most of the time, are dreaming without knowing we are dreaming. We are fully immersed in the projection, taking the circumstances at face value, reacting to the reflection as if it were the cause rather than the effect, trying to change the dream by rearranging the furniture inside it rather than shifting the consciousness that is generating it. Waking up inside the dream means developing the capacity to be in your circumstances without being completely defined by them. To look at your financial reality, whatever it currently looks like, and hold 2 things simultaneously. The honest acknowledgement of what is currently there, and the clear, settled, unshakable knowing that what is currently there is a projection of a past inner state, not a fixed fact about what is possible for you going forward. That gap between the current projection and the new inner state you are consciously cultivating is where the work lies. And it is uncomfortable work. I want to be honest about that. Because there is a period in every genuine inner shift where the external reality has not yet caught up with the internal change. Where you are holding a new inner state, a new quality of consciousness around money, around abundance, around your own identity as a financial creator, while the old projection is still showing up in your circumstances. D'Anna calls this the test of the dreamer, and it is real. It is the moment where most people give up, where the gap between the inner state and the outer reality feels too wide, too uncomfortable, too much like self-deception to persist in, where the old dream reasserts itself with the full weight of physical evidence behind it and says, "See, this is what is real. What you have been cultivating inside is just wishful thinking." And the practice, the specific, daily, unglamorous practice of the conscious dreamer, is to persist anyway. not in denial of the current circumstances, not in toxic positivity that pretends the external reality does not exist, but in the clear, grounded, deeply committed understanding that the current external reality is a lagging indicator. It is showing you the dream that the old inner state was generating. It is not showing you the limit of what the new inner state can create. In financial terms, and this is something I understood viscerally from my years in investment and wealth management, this is the practice of holding a long position in yourself, of making a conscious, deliberate, fully committed investment in the version of the dreamer you are becoming, and then holding that position through the volatility of the transition period. Not because the external evidence supports it yet, but because you understand the mechanism well enough to trust that the projection always follows the inner state. Always, without exception. I practiced this during my own transition out of the corporate world. There were months where the external financial reality was not reflecting the inner state I was cultivating, where the gap felt wide and the old dream was still showing up in the circumstances around me. And every single day was a choice to hold the new inner state, to persist in the new quality of consciousness, to keep dreaming deliberately even when the projection had not yet caught up. And it caught up, not all at once, but steadily, unmistakably, in the direction of the dream I had been consciously generating from the inside. So here is the practical invitation I want to leave you with from this second part of our series. Tonight, or right now, wherever you are, take a moment to honestly assess the quality of your dominant inner state around money and financial freedom, not the state you are trying to cultivate, the baseline state, the automatic, default, habitual inner climate that runs underneath all your conscious effort. What is the dreamer currently dreaming about your financial life? And then, gently, without judgment, without force, ask yourself what the conscious dreamer would dream instead. What inner state, what quality of consciousness, what baseline relationship with abundance would the version of you that is fully awake inside the dream be generating? And begin there. Begin with that state, not as a performance, not as a technique, but as a genuine, committed, daily practice of inhabiting the consciousness of the dreamer you are choosing to become. Because the dream always follows the dreamer. And the dreamer, the real one, the conscious one, the one that exists beneath all the conditioning and all the inherited limitations and all the borrowed beliefs about what is possible, that dreamer has always been you. In our next and final video of this series, Part 3, we are going to explore the concept that ties everything together, being versus doing, why the transformation you have been seeking has never been about what you do and everything about what you are. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Because that conversation is going to complete something that I think these first 2 videos have been building toward. I will see you there. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this video. It truly means the world to me, and I hope this conversation brought you something real, something you can carry with you starting today. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to explore together. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You never know whose life you might change with a single video. The books that have shaped my journey and that I personally recommend are all linked in the description below. Go check them out. They are worth every page. And don't forget, there is a free PDF in the description on how to interpret angel numbers and equal hours. Grab yours. It is completely free, and it might just change the way you see the signs the universe has been sending you all along. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.